I'll start with the program of Prime Minister. He arrived today morning, and the first engagement that the Prime Minister had was to go to the Singapore to be the guest speaker at the Singapore FinTech Festival. Now this is a festival which you all here in Singapore know it's in its third edition, but it is the first time that the head of government has been a keynote speaker. PM Prime Minister in his address had spoken about the many the way India had leveraged technology in its government's reaching out government services to people, in its social economic sector, and how India was a place to be in, where there is so much happening in the fintech sector. And he spoke about how technology and digital technology can be made to make life easier in many aspects. Prime Minister also launched the APIX, which is a platform through which the ASEAN financial institutions, innovators and users would connect with the Indian users to begin with, but it is finally a global platform in which there will be many more connects. Thereafter, the Prime Minister had a meeting with the Prime Minister of Singapore. Now, this was a meeting, you would recall that we had a commemorative summit this year in January in India. It marked the 25 years of engagement between India and ASEAN. And at that commemorative summit, all the ASEAN leaders were present. And not only that, thereafter on 26th of January, all of them were chief guests at the Republic of India. So Prime Minister Lee was also present there. And subsequently, Prime Minister had visited Singapore here in June, where he had delivered the Shangri-La Dialogue, where he was at the Shangri-La Dialogue, and he spoke about India's vision of the Indo-Pacific. So this was actually the third meeting between Prime Minister Lee and Prime Minister Modi this year. And Prime Minister Modi congratulated Prime Minister Lee for the chairmanship and the excellent leadership provided by Singapore as the chair of ASEAN. They discussed, Prime Minister Lee thanked Prime Minister Modi for delivering the keynote address at the Singapore FinTech Festival, which had actually reflected of how important the sector is, not only for the world, but also for the two countries. And there was a recognition by both the leaders that this could be an area of cooperation in which we must work together even more. They reviewed the relationship as it is. They were satisfied that the second review of the CEPA had concluded and the third review was ongoing. They looked at the great connectivity between the two countries. We do know that tourists between the two countries are increasing, and so are the passenger flights, and who are doing very well. They also exchanged view on the progress being made in the RCEP negotiations. The second meeting that Prime Minister had was with Prime Minister of Australia. This was a meeting in which, this was the first meeting since Prime Minister Scott Morrison became the Prime Minister. So Prime Minister congratulated him on his becoming Prime Minister. Prime Minister Modi recalled his visit to Australia in 2014, which actually was a visit by a Prime Minister of India to Australia after 30 years. And since 2014, the relationship, there has been high-level exchanges. Prime Minister of Australia has visited India, and now we would be having the President of India visiting Australia, and this will be the first visit by a president ever to Australia. So that is going to be taking place starting 21st of November. The two leaders had an extensive exchange of views on the entire gamut of bilateral relations, and including exchange of views on regional issues. In the bilateral relationship, there was they looked at and spoke of the white paper, Australia's foreign policy white paper, as well as the paper which Australian Department of Trade has got, which is India's India's economic review strategy, India's economic strategy. Reflecting on that, there was a recognition by both the leaders that there are many areas in which we can work together in building up the economic partnership, especially as the India strategy paper, which has been prepared by as an initiative of the Australian, has many good ideas about how you can cooperate between one state of Australia with another state of India. So, and how we can move forward in that aspect. They also discussed issues relating to continuing, of course, with the high-level engagement. Our Prime Minister mentioned 3 specific areas where there was a great opportunity. One is looking at the sovereign and the pension funds of Australia. There is scope for them to invest. Prime Minister Modi invited Australia to look at investing into the National Infrastructure Investment Fund. There was the second item which we looked at was possibility that was looked at was the technological the technologies that Australia has for mining, and if there would be a cooperation on that. And there was a discussion on defense and security cooperation, and both expressed satisfaction that there were a number of areas in which we could be working together, including our cooperation which is ongoing in the various joint exercises. I think that covers more or less Australia. And the third bilateral which Prime Minister had was with the Prime Minister of Thailand. Thailand is going to, of course, become the next chair of ASEAN, and it will not only be the chair of ASEAN, but it would also be the country coordinator for India. So that assumes significance for the relationship. The 2 Prime Ministers reviewed the relationship. There was emphasis on projects of connectivity, there was emphasis on project of economic collaboration, and there was the commitment by both leaders that we would be working together in building the India-ASEAN relationship in the coming period. The fourth bilateral which Prime Minister had was with Vice President Mike Pence, US, on which Foreign Secretary has already briefed you. I think I'll stop here.
Sir, if you could brief on the RCEP meeting with the students.
Thank you very much. This was the second RCEP Leaders Summit. The purpose of the summit was to take stock of the negotiations where they have reached and give mandate to trade ministers and negotiators to take it forward. In his intervention, Prime Minister made 5 very important points. One, he complimented trade ministers and negotiators for substantial progress that has been made, particularly in 2018. As 7 chapters out of total 16, they have been concluded. Second, he noted that significant progress has been made in the market access negotiations of goods, but also highlighted that we need to make similar efforts to make progress in services negotiations, as they constitute more than 50% of the GDP of most of the RCEP countries. And in future, services are going to be playing a very, very important role. Third important point that was made was relating to early conclusion of the negotiations by fast-tracking and intensifying negotiations, both multilaterally and bilaterally. Lastly, the important point that was made, that any such multilateral agreement which has diverse circumstances and developmental requirements should be modern, comprehensive, balanced, and mutually beneficial. Only then people of all countries will be benefited by such an agreement.
Thank you, sir. Prime Minister is about to leave for the gala dinner. Secretary has to attend as well. So we have time maybe for 2 questions. Yes, please.
Madam Secretary, was the issue of the Quad brought up in any of the bilateral meetings today, particularly with Prime Minister Morrison of Australia? And was there, we're told by the Australians that there was actually an officials meeting of this so-called Quad, where Indian officials attended along with officials from US, Japan, Australia. Could you confirm that and comment on it?
A meeting of the Quad was in fact to take place, but let me tell you that it is not a part of the East Asia Summit, but they have met. This is a meeting which is going to be taking place, and when the meeting, after the meeting takes place, normally there's a press release also that is issued, so you would be kept informed of it.
So the meeting hasn't taken place?
The meeting is going to take place tomorrow. So it's taking place tomorrow, I think, between the officials. And after the meeting, normally each country we come up with a press release. India's position on the meeting and the discussions which will take place, we will issue after that meeting is concluded. Yes.
Mr. Pandey, I just wanted to go back to the RCEP. Just wondered if you can elaborate on what are India's biggest concerns regarding the RCEP?
Prime Minister very clearly exhibited his support to RCEP agreement, and actually he urged all leaders to give required mandate so that these negotiations could be concluded at the earliest. He exactly used the word early conclusion. So which means that India is strongly committed, and as regards concern, since the developmental circumstances of each of the country is different, and therefore he urged that any such agreement should be, which is finalized, should be modern, comprehensive, balanced, and mutually beneficial, which means it should benefit all the member countries who are participating.
Any other question? I mean, if it is other than the two topics which are raised.
Gurdeep Singh from PTI, Gurdeep Singh. So, the services, can you elaborate? What is it that India wants in the services? India has got a lot of skilled manpower that needs to be sent abroad. And can you elaborate on that?
First of all, let me clarify that the movement of persons in that sense, which you just referred to, is actually not part of the trade negotiation.
Right.
It's only the temporary movement of people for the delivery of services that is covered in any trade agreement. And India's concern is not about any particular issue, but India is pitching for a balanced and mutually beneficial agreement. In services areas, most of the trade now happens online, which you call mode 1 in the trade parlance, and mode 1 place where movement of people is very limited to professionals only. It happens online. So most of the trade in future in digital economies is going to happen online, where India has competence and it is willing to share that experience and expertise for the benefit of all RPCs.